Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's review, we are going to be testing something that has to do with one of my favorite things on this earth. And no, not Flex Glue, not Flex Seal, but fire. What we're going to be testing is the BioLite CampStove 2. As you can see on the front, it says turn fire into electricity. So basically what this is a small camp stove that you can cook on or use for heat or whatever. And as you burn a fire inside the camp stove, it has a 2600 milliamp hour battery pack that attaches to the front of it that charges from the heat of the fire. So you can kind of, if you take this camping or whatever, you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. You could cook food while you charge your phone, your laptop, camera. And this was really interesting to me because I've never seen anything else like this before, except for the other products from the company BioLite. And as far as I know, they're the only ones that are really doing anything like this. And something else interesting about this is that it has, you can see here, it has a flex light, because we all know that we like our things that flex. And not only that, on this side, you can see that it has along with the battery pack powers a fan that is inside of the camp stove, so that way you have a smokeless type of fire, which we will be testing because obviously we're in the garage, and if it gets really smoky in here, you're going to see it on camera, so we'll test that out as well. Get this thing open and test it out and see if it works. Okay, so there's only two parts to this thing. Your first part is you have this battery pack that comes, you have a power switch, shows you how charged it is, and if you push it again, you can hear that it has a fan, which is right here in the back, and you just hold this to turn it off. And then it has this kind of a probe on the back of it, and all that does is the probe slides into here, and then this slot right here on the back of this is for that fan, so that it can blow air and cause like a torpedo type effect inside the cage where you build the fire, so that way you can get your smokeless effect. But it's extremely easy to set up. You just have this little orange nub right here on the back, and all you do is just put this in here, line that up with this nub, and then open this foot. When you open that foot, it locks this in here, and then you have two more feet open up. And then now you're ready to start a fire. And another thing to note is that on the front of this, down here, is where you have your USB port, where you would plug something in if you were charging it, or if you weren't charging it, you could plug in your flex light and then shine light into the fire or whatever you're doing. And then down here on the bottom, you can see here, there is another micro USB port if you have a use for that. And that's all the ports you have. So let's start building a fire and test this thing. Alright, so before we get started and build a fire, I'm not going to need this flex light because I have plenty of light in this garage. I have lots of wood. Start piling it in here. I'm really curious to see how fast it goes through wood, which I'm assuming is going to depend on how high you have the fan setting set to. So that seems to be pretty full. Alright, I'm going to cheat and use a blowtorch, of course. Alright, I have the fan setting on the first setting. Let's go to number 2. Oh, it looks like now we're getting somewhere. So you can see here, you can see this little other marker that I'm assuming is just going to show how much heat is being transmitted to that little probe that goes in there. You can see we're at, I think, 2 bars. It's not smokeless, but there's not a ton of smoke. Let's turn the fan up one more notch. So now what I'll do, turn this thing this way, plug in my USB cable, and you can see it is charging my phone with fire. So that's pretty cool. That's the main thing I wanted to know if this thing could do. All right, I'm just gonna let this thing run, and then I'll come back in about 20-30 minutes and give you guys an update. Alright guys, it's been about 30 minutes that I've turned the fan down to the lowest setting so that I don't have to yell over top of it and it's not too annoying for you guys to listen to. But for the whole 30 to 35 minutes I had this thing with the fan on full blast and I was just shoving as much wood into it as it would take, and it has kept, I'm up to 83% now on my phone. It's charging my phone the entire time, and you can see over here I think we're still at the full mark for our fire gauge. I was reading through the manual to try to figure out exactly what this little gauge meant, and I really couldn't find anything, so I'm only going to assume that it just is a gauge of how hot that probe is inside. But something I'm extremely impressed with is even at full blast with this thing just running just as hot as it can go, I took some temperatures around different parts of it, and this up here and the cage both stayed extremely cool. And I don't know exactly how hot the fire was in the middle because my thermometer only goes to 1,000 degrees, so it was maxing out over 1,000 degrees. But this cage out here, you can touch it, and it's not gonna like blister you or anything, because it was staying at like 150 to 160 degrees on the outside of this cage, even though it's over 1,000 degrees in the center. And this front battery pack was staying at like 130, 140 degrees. To me, that's extremely impressive. And the air circulation system they have, that with that little fan that blows the air around, really helps keep the outside cool so you don't like bump into it and burn yourself or anything. For 90% of me using it, it was definitely completely smokeless and there was no smoke in the garage. I don't know if you can see it now, but it is pretty smoky in here, but that's completely my fault because I had a few longer sticks that were sticking like up here, and I just kind of piled them on there, and then whenever I took my attention away for a few seconds, they fell out onto the table and they started smoking a lot. So that's why, if you see any smoke in the garage, that's why the garage looks pretty smoky. So that was not the fault of the CampStove, that was my bad. But so far this thing just seems to be extremely easy to use, especially once you get the fire going and you get it kind of warmed up and you get the fan going. It takes almost no effort. You just, as long as you can keep putting fuel into it, it'll just keep burning and burning. And then you can run it at different fan settings so you can make your wood last longer. Speed your fan up to be faster or slower so you can kind of change the temperature that's up on the top if you're cooking something. But so far, I really like this thing and it really works good. And I'm gonna let this fire die down and then we'll come back. So I let the fire die down. I dumped out the ashes and everything. So from here, if you were out in the wild using this or whatever, you would just fold this leg down. And you could pull this apart, put this inside of here, and then you could put all of this inside of this little bag. But while I was letting this cool down, I was really trying to think of a negative, because every product has to have a negative. But I was really struggling to come up with anything negative to say about this, because this is, in my mind, has all the criteria of a, not perfect, but a really good product. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's smokeless for the most part, at least once the fire gets going, it's completely smokeless. You can charge your phone off of it. The fire does charge this battery pack. The fan works great. It's easy to use. It's small and compact. It regulates the heat very well, like I showed with the temperatures. There's not really anything that it does bad. The only thing that I could come up with as a negative is that these little fins that they give you up on the top to put a pot onto, is that if you put a pot on top of these, there's no room under here really. There's just enough room for the fire to breathe, but you're gonna have to take the pot off every time you want to put wood inside the stove to refuel it. So that's really the only thing I could think of as a negative, but then I started thinking that that's not really a negative, because if you were using this, that means you have fire and you at least have electricity, and if you're trying to cook, then you have some type of food, and this thing is only $120. And for $120 for everything that you get, I think that is an extremely good deal. Especially if you're the type of person that has like a bug out bag that you keep in your car or something. This thing is so small, you could throw this in a bug out bag, and then if something happens, you have this. As long as you can make fire, which you should have fire making materials in that bag, then you have fire and electricity. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.